time for a panel discussion and startup pitches. Since we have here one stage, we'll continue with the panel discussions, but you can see that sessions are now live. And when you go to sessions, you can listen to some startup pitches. So now you can choose whether you want to listen to startup pitches or to stay with us. And if you are interested in learning about diversity, talent, and bridging the gap between diversity and talent management, I encourage you to stay with us. And I'm going to introduce the host of the panel. Please welcome on this stage Parna Baskar-Basu, founder of Brand and Buzz Marketing. She was also one of our keynote speakers at WomenTech Mid-Atlantic Conference. Hi, Parna. And
hello,
welcome.
Anna. How are you? Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this panel discussion.
Absolutely. And here are other panelists are joining. Hi, Annette.
Hello.
How are you?
I am doing well.
Hi, Aleona.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome.
Then, Parna, I will leave the stage to you. Please enjoy the discussion, and Camilla should be joining us any moment. Here she is. Hi, Camilla. Camilla, can you hear us?
I can hear you. It's
Perfect.
choppy again. This happened before when I logged on. The audio is funky and then it resolved itself.
All right. Ladies, thank you so much for joining the panel. And hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. I do want to say that, as we are having this conversation, do feel free to ask us questions, put in your thoughts, looking forward to your comments as well. So as Anna said, we are going to be talking about how to bridge the gap between diversity and talent management. And we will also cover, I feel like, quite a range of topics from, women on boards, how do we break more glass ceilings and all the good stuff. So before we get started, why don't we start with the introduction? Camilla, actually, all right. Aleona, would you like to start us off? If you just want to share.
Parna, I think we lost her, or is it just me?
Why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself? I bet she'll come back on.
Yeah. Okay, well, hi, everyone. My name is Aleona Gardner. I am a senior HR business partner with Blue Prism. And I'm also the founder of Black Professionals in Intelligent Automation. So Blue Prism basically develops intelligent automation software that allows companies to basically create a digital workforce. And I've been with Blue Prism for 2 years now. And I started Black Professionals in Intelligent Automation last year as a way to basically help close the diversity gap between Black professionals and Black professionals in tech, specifically in intelligent automation. We know that, there's always a challenge with diversity in technology, even though we know that there is definitely a need for it. So what I started this program basically to find ways about basically creating more awareness and education around intelligent automation. There was a study done in 2018 by McKinsey that basically showed that automation is set to disproportionately affect the Black community, or I should say impact the Black community. And we know that, and mainly the reason for that is because automation is really going to, is really the future of work, and it's going to change how we work, essentially impacting a lot of support roles. And we know that a lot of Black men and women are not in those leadership directive roles that are basically going to be leading the change and the future of work. So what we're trying to do here at Blue Prism is basically get ahead of that. And we want to ensure that not only are we providing the software, but we're also worried about the social impact of it. And so we're trying to upskill Black men and women to ensure that they are not impacted by intelligent automation. Instead, that they are now become the leaders of it, become trained in it, upskilled in ways that they can now, go from being a data entry, have a data entry role, and instead being the leader of automation for their function. And so that is really what we're working on. So we're working on different programs to help to do that, helping to get intelligent automation and our Blue Prism, in education modules into schools as well as into different communities. So really happy to be here. Thank you.
I'll go next. I'm Annette Klosky, and I am a co-founder of Future Point of View, and we're a boutique consulting firm that really focuses on digital transformation and helping companies build strategy roadmaps that really help them harness trends and technology to get ahead in the market. I also facilitate executive peer groups through the Women's Executive Board, and I am the chair for the Women Presidents Organization for my state, and also the state chair for the 2020 Women on Board. We have our big event today. So I am grateful to be here with you. My kind of career work has been in culture, organizational development, leadership, executive coaching, and doing a lot around diversity and just gender balance, whether it's a boardroom or an executive room or just in an organization. So I'm glad to be here.
Nice. Camilla?
Hi, everyone. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Great. So you're coming through very choppy on my end, but you can hear me. So I'll move forward, and please let me know in the chat if you need anything else. Pleasure to be here. I'm Camilla Benjamin Fuller. I am the Chief Diversity Officer and Corporate Social Responsibility Leader at PTC. I am in I think it's my 10th week there. So it's a full whirlwind. And prior to joining PTC, I was at TripAdvisor, where I was also leading their work in equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I'm one of the rare birds that have been in this space for a very long time. So prior to that, I worked for Korn Ferry and also the Gillette company, Gillette, and then it became P&G while I was there in this space. And so I've dedicated my career to looking at ways of making diversity, equity, and inclusion the focus of organizations, environments that I'm in, both in the corporate space, but I also have a passion for the arts. So I've done work with women and non-binary artists to think about how they can showcase their voices and giving platform to their stories in the craft. I've also taken this work into other environments like higher ed and correctional facilities. I'm super thrilled to be a part of the conversation today, and hopefully my audio will improve. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. Well, very impressive, all of you. And as for me, as Anna said, I'm the founder of Brandon Buzz. And my story really was I am in the tech world, and I was one of actually the only woman sitting around a table of all male executive teams. And that's when I decided that, I'm going to start being an advocate of women, especially women in tech. And about 2 years ago, I started my company, and one of the focus areas is really to help women find their voice, help them become thought leaders, and really, help organizations really think through their diversity strategy. So yeah, it's been quite a journey, and I'm so happy to be with you guys here today. So why don't we start, Camilla, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off and just define what diversity is, because it can be, diversity can mean so many different things to different people. So help us set the stage on what diversity means to you.
And I think that was coming to me, right, Parna?
Yes, that's your question.
My skills here. Okay, awesome. Or I should just pretend, I'm hearing whatever question and answer whatever I feel like. It's fascinating because depending on, so historically, diversity as a body of work has often been seen as a U.S.-oriented activity that has unfortunately been pushed out and exported to other parts of the world. and they've been subjected to this US experiment. When you really start to look at what diversity and inclusive behavior is, you realize that these conversations have been happening in different geographies and different organizations for a very long time. They just haven't been codified in the same way. So when I think of diversity, I sometimes kind of remove that label and look at what are the practices and policies that look at difference and understanding all of the different dimensions of diversity that an individual or group of individuals would bring into an environment. I also think that right now there's a hyper focus on diversity, starting with the Black Lives Matter movement in the US. And I sort of cheekily say this, it's obviously a very heavy topic, but I say, there's a hyper obsession right now with Blackness. Thank you. That benefits me in certain ways sometimes. But the conversation is much larger than that. So there are lots of great models you can go out there and look at. Korn Ferry happens to have a great one as well. But the dimensions of diversity range from sexual orientation, gender, race, ethnicity, all the age, the things that you traditionally think of, but also extend to tenure with an organization, whether you're sitting in headquarters or a satellite office, industry experience, if you're coming, and even within, I work within tech. Are you an engineer or are you in one of the other parts of the business, right? So all of these kinds of things play into to the equation around whether or not you have a diverse workforce. And organizations will largely have like high-level targets. Gender seems to be the one that's easiest to talk about. And then maybe they can talk about sexual orientation and age and disability. We know that in a lot of geos outside of the US, there are regulations around disability and gender, so that helps move that conversation along. Race and ethnicity is a very hard one to talk about globally. And then it kind of stops there. So I encourage people to really expand the way you're thinking about it, because there's lots of dimensions that impact individuals day to day. And we don't want to just run after the burning platform. If there's an obsession with gender because there's a social push, but tomorrow there might be another category that becomes particularly important. So just keeping your eyes sort of open to that expansive space is critical. The last thing I'll say there is that when we limit the way we define diversity, we limit the participation, the full participation of the groups that we're a part of. So no one comes in with one dimension. No one comes in with just two dimensions. And often the groups of people who then can extract themselves from this conversation because they feel like, oh, this isn't about me. Well, it is. It is about the majority groups as well, because they all have different pieces that impact who they are and how they show up. And when I do this work, I try to create space for everyone to tell their stories.
Yep, I think that's a really, really good way of looking at diversity for sure. Annette, again, playing off the diversity part, when we talk about, a diverse team or diverse board, do you feel that we should be using perhaps a different phrase, like perhaps gender balance is a better way of explaining when we talk about the importance of diversity on boards, as an example?
That is one thing that we have done with the Women on Boards. It's about the gender balance. I think diversity, I go to inclusion because I think if you are inclusive, the diversity comes. And I really feel like Camilla said, it's broad. You need to have a representation of what your company, the client base is, who you're serving, who your employees are. So you need to just make sure that you have a diverse, group of people. I always explain it to where when you put an executive team together at an organization, you don't just put all the financial people in or just the CEO and the board. You make a mix of all the different aspects of that organization. You have sales and marketing. You're going to have operations. You have finance. But that gives you the perspective of what's going on in the organization. It's the same thing with people. You have a diverse people. And I think Camilla did a great job of it can mean different things to different companies. It's not one model that this is how you become diverse or this is how you check the box. We're kind of past that. It's about really being intelligent. Do you have the right mix of technical skills? the older generation from, how they put the organizations together. And then, of course, there are places where you can identify, like we have identified on the Russell 3000, there is a discrimination of the diversity on those boards. Our focus is on gender balance. And there's a good reason for that, So I think, just the question you asked is you have to ask yourself what it is you're trying to accomplish. And does your executive team, does your board of director, do your employees represent what diversity you need for your market in your industry?
Yeah, definitely good points. Aleona, I think just recently I was reading this McKinsey report that, where they were talking about the possibility of about 2 million women maybe planning to leave corporate America, and especially now during COVID, because they're professionals, they're also taking care of, families, elderly folks and elderly family members. I wonder if what your thoughts are in how we can, or how companies can empower these women professionals so they don't have to leave. I mean, we've come a long way of, especially in the tech world, of getting more women to be in this industry. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think companies could do to keep the women at work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a very kind of interesting topic that as I've actually been discussing just recently in our company, because we've been talking about, I think for the past, I don't know, maybe 5, 10 years, maybe probably just 5, we've been hearing a lot about work-life balance and how do we achieve that. And what I think, we've gotten to the point, I think most people have started to realize, especially during this year, during COVID, is that there really is no work-life balance, right? It's more like a work-life integration. And it's like, how do you, as a company, find ways for, your employees to feel comfortable having this new kind of integrated life? We are now working, many of us are working from home. So that means that there is no separation between the two. And I think it's doing things to kind of really support that for women going forward. And it's kind of really goes back to our new ways of working and really identifying that. I think companies really need to start to focus on how do we change our perspective on how people work. We can't, the world has changed. We've really pivoted into this new direction, and I think companies need to as well. And that includes things like, adding new benefits. I think, we've talked in my company, about, fertility benefits and, different types of family benefits that really help to support, families who are working and who really want to be able to have both worlds, right? Because it is both worlds. You hear some stories and some people discuss that you can't really have the two. You can't have a family. You can't be a successful businesswoman. And I think that's not true. I think it's all about, being in the right places that support you, support your growth. And I think companies need to do that by not only, kind of developing those benefits, but also thinking about how the style of work. What are hours going to be like in the future? If we're all working from home, what does that mean, 5 years from now? How are we going to be interacting with each other? We know that we want to promote a family and work kind of, integration and balance. How do we ensure that we're supporting that and finding ways for the two to work together? And I think that's the kind of the thought process. I don't think we have all the answers as of yet, right? I think we're still discovering what those things can be, but starting to make the first initial steps of, looking at, like I said, benefits that help. And as well as looking at the different styles of work. I know, at my company, we've thought about, well, what are ways that we can help to kind of give people breaks during the day, because it does seem like we're on all the time now, from morning to the evening, and it seems like you can't really get away. I mean, we're all either working in our living rooms or right down the hall from our bedrooms, or our kids in the other room. So what can we do? And I think it's just about incorporating things within the day that really kind of support that integration. Understanding that if we're all working at home, we can't just sit in a chair for 7-8 hours straight. We need to be able to say, I can commit to, some meetings in the morning, but then from midday to like 2 in the afternoon, I need to be able to spend some time with my kids or help them with homework or whatever the case may be. And I think some companies are making that shift, but I think all companies need to start to kind of move to that new ways of working.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think this is where the more diverse teams that we have, or especially in the top, like the management, or if you have more women, I feel like they understand the importance of everything that you guys just talked about. And I feel like we are reaching a point finally that we are starting to break the glass ceilings a little bit. There's a crack. We now have a woman elect vice president, right? So that's definitely a big deal. And there's about, I think, 37 CEOs, right? Or there's women CEOs in the top 37 companies, and they're running these organizations. So I feel like we are starting to see a crack. May not feel that way right now, but maybe it's a shatter. But I'm wondering, maybe this is Annette, if I could ask you this question. I think it was Senator Jackson who had that bill of having more women on boards. I think 20% of all public companies should have women on boards by 2020. Where are we with that? And do you feel like that's going to start helping companies think differently?
Yeah, and NASDAQ actually just has something out too that they may be requiring companies. But the Russell 3000, which is the index that follows the publicly traded companies, has steadily increased over the last 4 years. So we have gone from 16% nationally to 22.6 women on the Russell 3000 boards. So, we are making progress. There's 23 out of the 25 states that have 20 companies or more on the Russell 3000. All but 2 have exceeded their 20% goal. Florida and Utah have not done that yet. And states achieved that 20% for the first time. Alabama, Colorado, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, and Texas. So we are making strides. I think like you said, we don't know whether we've cracked it or where we are. I think that one of the telling signs for us is when we talk about gender balanced boards, of that 3000 index, only 63 companies nationwide have gender balanced boards. So that's 5%. So we have a long way to go. But I do think just the awareness and the networking and really, training and teaching people how to be board ready or how to be executive ready to be able to step up and move into those roles that get them the experience they need to have better experience. I think it's happening, but even though the needle seems like maybe it's moving smaller, what I see is just the grassroots campaign of different organizations, whether it's Women Presidents Organization, it's the Women's Executive Boards, or this Women on Boards. There are groups that really have or not only CEOs of the organizations, but other board members that are really advocating. They're advocating for women. And again, it's not just women. There's diversity within women. It's diversity in, it may be ethnicity, but also the skill sets that are relevant for a boardroom. That has changed. So it's not just a financial acumen. You don't have to just be the CEO. Technology, those are really essential skills that boards are looking for as people with that expertise. Marketing skills, they're different than what they were before because they have this high impact of AI and just digital transformation. And HR starting to come because we have a whole next generation of a workforce, the way we work, where we work, how organizations are really collaborating. And so they, at the top, they need that expertise. So I think when those skill sets start widening, it allows for more of us with those types of background to be able to be board ready and step up. So I think, I think we're making strides all the time. And yes, the legislation helps because it kind of just lights a fire under those companies. Women on Board does a great job of really trying to advocate and educate. They have programs to help people be board ready, but they also help companies on how they can be diverse. And if it's adding a seat to your board, or if it's replacing a male, whatever that is, but it's also looking at diversity as a whole too.
Makes sense. Camilla, Aleona, anything to add?
One of the things I wanted to say, because when we think about, our new vice president-elect, being a woman, and, we think it is a kind of, breaking that ceiling, but I think it's also bridging a gap, because it's bridging a gap of thought and perspective, because I think what we can say is that for, the past, 100 years, we've essentially been, committed to this one way of thinking, that, only, men deserve to be, in those positions. Only men are equipped to kind of manage that type of responsibility and stress. And I think what we've, in this kind of time, I think what we've realized is that now people are starting to think differently. And that includes men themselves. They're starting to realize that, okay, maybe a women can, lead. And so there was that gap there that I think we haven't bridged it completely, but I think we are starting to. And I think that's really important, right? Because it's not just about us breaking through, but we need to obviously get people to see why it's so important for women to be at the top, for women to also lead, for us to say that, we want equality, and everyone is treated the same. We really have to kind of take those actions and really start to think that way.
Makes sense. Camilla?
Well, I'm both very excited, and it's also caused me some issues because even close family stumble and will call me Camilla instead of Camilla. So I don't know. I guess that's a good problem to have. That's a good problem to have. But I think what it also, I mean, obviously there's it represents something really incredible around gender inclusion, but the fact that she also represents various levels of identity, a blended family, an interracial relationship. I mean, that I could not ask for a better sort of case study for intersectionality. And I think that it's important to continue to bring that to bear, because historically, especially within the United States, the women's movement, feminist movement, has been seen to benefit one group, particularly white women, over others. And so for her to now stand in a place where she's a representative of a movement of another wave,
Right.
of multiple cultures and caregiving responsibilities, I just think that is another way for us to break through how we think about gender, and really center that conversation around intersectionality. I will say, though, in caution, I think the same way when Obama was elected, there was a lot of dialogue around us being a sort of post-racist country, that we shouldn't, we still need to be diligent, that this is not a sort of post-gender exclusive country that we're in now, that there's still continued work to be done on the ground. But yeah, it's a very exciting moment.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think to your point, Camilla, as you were saying, this is definitely the best time to be a woman ever, especially if you're a woman of color. I think there's a lot more doors we hope will be open, but we also have to balance how are the men feeling about it. I feel, because that's the other side of it, because even when I've heard, some men who are going for a job, for example, and they'll say, oh, I know I'm a white male, so I'm not going to get that job. So how do we find the balance of continuing to push for diversity, which is so overdue, but also find the male allies that we will need to be able to move up the chain. I'll leave that open to whoever wants to start. I was just curious. So that's kind of the role of a male ally, and how do we use them to help us move forward?
I think that's key. I think they have to be part of the conversation and kind of arm in arm with how we approach diversity. So, because Women on Boards, the 2020 Women on Boards are having all their events across the country, and that's kind of been a focus of mine. We have panel members and keynote speakers that are men on the programs of every city. I think we did 30 events. We also use director coaches, and it is a mix. It's diverse among our mix. So when you get involved with that organization, you don't just see women. You see the mix because, first of all, the men are in seats that, we want to be in as well. And I think it just works both ways. And I think it's a conversation, and I think it's understanding. It's fascinating to hear a male's perspective of women coming into those, whether it's a leadership role or you're moving up in your board experience. Maybe you're on nonprofits boards and you want to move up to a private board or a public board, or maybe you just want to advocate. It's very interesting to hear a different perspective than the seat you sit in. So it doesn't really matter your color of skin, what your gender is, it's a different perspective. And I think what's key is that's what has to be happening, is those different perspectives. And that's why I use inclusion, because it's not just about women or one thing or another. It's about that inclusivity and that the conversation expands. So we invite them to the table. We invite them to be involved. They sponsor events, and kind of across, what I do professionally too is all about making sure that we don't get one focus on what we're doing, that it's inclusive.
Yeah, I think it's also going to take, the women who are in leadership positions to talk and, have conversations with the men in leadership positions. A lot of times you hear, why do we have to explain ourselves, or why do we have to tell people that we need equality? And I try not to think about it that way. I think it's just more about, everyone comes from different backgrounds and different experiences. And everyone essentially was raised or brought up differently, and they were raised and brought up to think differently. So I think sometimes, you just have to have conversations with people. And sometimes they're tough conversations, but those are usually kind of the breaking points to kind of get through to someone, to let them understand why this is important. And I think we, as all the women on this panel, have to have those conversations with men. And I try to have them with conversations with men at my company, and just letting them know, look, this is what we need, letting them know whether it's a function. And I tell them, hey, I tell the SVP, you need more women on your team. I'm not saying get rid of men. I'm just saying you need more women, because we need the, diverse thought. We need diverse emotions, diverse perspectives. And it's having those conversations, but we have to be willing to do that as well. That understanding that, every man is not just going to open the door and say hey, just come in, you got this. No, but, that doesn't mean that the ones that are not doing it wouldn't be willing to. It just means that we need to be willing to have that conversation, and, and maybe there's a breakthrough and maybe there isn't. And I'm not saying we have to go out of our way, but I think that's the starting point.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah, I think too, one thing is to not be afraid to pull on models that have worked, whether they're models in government or other companies where gender inclusion has been adopted and successful. So bringing in those examples of this is how, if you're talking about moving forward an organization or a society, you need to have weigh in and perspective from the folks that are there. So it's just a healthy way to move. But the second, just coming back to a point that I made earlier, is that it cannot be about, white men being the ones who are always having to learn and sort of be an ally, and they never have space to talk about masculinity or whiteness. it's super important that they explore those things, because if they don't have space to talk about it and their struggles, then they create a wall and it becomes us versus them, and the conversation goes nowhere. And then secondly, they're not two-dimensional. So likely they have, other interests, family members, disabilities, orientation differences, like there are all kinds of other things, but often their identity gets compressed to those two pieces. And if they feel compressed, it shuts down the conversation again. So it's not to say that everyone's sort of operating at the same level and needs the same support, but we have to start to see people as multidimensional. Otherwise, I think we're going to keep running in the same circle, right? And not really moving forward the way we need to.
Yeah, no, you make a really good point. And I think all through my career, that has been one of the things that I have always done, like is always working with the management team to make sure that we are thinking strategically, that diversity is strategic, not just, hiring a woman and just saying, check, we are diverse now. And also as a parent, I have to teach my son the same thing, that he's got to be open-minded. He's got to make sure that he's supporting the woman and all the good stuff. So we all play we wear multiple hats.
I think another point that's that's interesting too is when you have, let's just say one woman, or maybe it's one Black male, even with just that one voice, they also find that sometimes that voice isn't heard until one or two are together that represent that. And it's kind of fascinating. So I think it's difficult. We go back to that check the box. If you're just adding a woman, to check the box, or adding somebody with ethnicity to check the box, that's not inclusiveness, And so I love Camilla's, follow models, like what is working? What are people doing that they've tried? Because getting somebody in that seat or that position is the easy part. It's the facilitating how you integrate those perspectives and that voice. And so I love that she, used models, and because people are doing it and some people are having great success.
Yeah, for sure. So I see that we are almost at the end of our time. So let me ask you, if each of you could give one tip that would help companies think about diversity as part of their strategy, what would that be?
So I'll start. I think companies, and I feel like I know this, companies need to really start, incorporating diversity and inclusivity and belonging into their everyday, into their processes, their strategy, their overall functions, and really hold every manager accountable to diversity. And I say that by not just holding them accountable, saying like, hey, you're committed to having a diverse team. It's more about, setting, when you set the quotas and metrics for each manager, that a part of their quota is to have an impact, have a diverse impact on the organization, whether it's, obviously bringing in diverse talent, but also, having diverse thought, diverse innovation, all those type of things. You really have to start holding managers accountable to it, because, being in HR, I know that diversity and inclusivity and belonging and all that is not achieved just by HR running it. It's just not. It's achieved when everyone is held accountable to it, employees, managers, the execs, but we have to start by kind of building it into their metrics and their quota.
Good point. Camilla? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Annette. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I'll just speak to the people here. I mean, I would invest in yourselves. I would, really, what is your goal? What do you want to do? Kind of set your sights there. Invest in yourself. And then one of my biggest pet peeve is, and I hear this all the time, is, and I'll use a woman, they don't want to be the token female. Be the token whatever. Like that, we all have to take those steps forward. So no matter if somebody's checking a box or not, those are doors that are opening and opportunities. And I just encourage people to take them. So, I just step up where you can step up. ask for leadership roles and opportunities and push yourself. So, you have to invest in yourself. That's the best thing that people can do to elevate.
Excellent point. Camilla?
Yeah, I love both of those points. You're both speaking to me. so, so around the investment piece, I would say, we sometimes enter these conversations and we're thinking about, gender inclusion, gender balance, and kind of focus there. But inclusive leadership, inclusive action, policies, and practices are critical of any leader going forward. Like, if you want to remain marketable as the world of work changes, you have to be able to do that for the reasons that that we brought up, because it's not just about who you're bringing into the organization or a recruiting activity. It's about your customers and how you're producing your product, how you're designing your product, how you're engaging with customers. And customers and employees alike are making, or potential employees are making very, very they're making their decisions based on what they're seeing you do, or what you stand for, your purpose. And they have choices about where they go, where they invest their time and their energy. So inclusivity as a whole it's a leadership skill. It's a necessary capability. And I think for organizations that may still be struggling with why this is important, look at some of the titans. I'm a huge fan of Procter & Gamble, and they historically have been a great example of how a brand lives their diversity and inclusion goals end to end. They've produced incredible pieces that talk about difficult things in culture and society. It's produced by the brand, but they talk about things like transgender inclusion. They have a piece called The Talk about children of color, Black children, and the conversations that they need to have with their parents and guardians about safety. So if there are brands who are doing work like that and leaders who are supporting work like that, they are going to win out time over time.
Excellent points. And I know this is a topic that's very close to all our hearts, and we can't have this conversation all day long. But I see Anna is back. We are out of time. So ladies, thank you so much for your insights. It's been a great discussion. And Anna, thank you so much for the opportunity. Really appreciate being here. And I hope you have an awesome rest of the event.
Thanks, Parna. Thanks for your excellent moderations. Annette, Aleona, and Camilla, thank you very much for your insight. It was great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. People have been leaving lots of positive comments in the chat, so it was super insightful.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.